There are 10 rights of the reader, and the right not to read is
we've mastered that.
It's a right, and becoming a reader, the right not to read is there for non-readers, but it's there for readers too. And I think we see it as it's okay they're not reading, but as a non-reader, it's not as okay. So we want to get them to the point where it's a right not to read when you're a reader, but if they're not associating themselves as a reader yet, then it is still a problem, and we want to get them there. And then I love the rest of the rights. There are 10 of them, and it's the right to read out loud, the right to feel like you're inside the book, and they're kind of all over the place. But then there's 10 rights, one warning: don't make fun of people who don't read, or they never will. Fun stuff. So, I'm Erin McCall, and I work at the Galvin. I'm the media specialist.
Oh, okay.
I think we've met in passing.
I've got 8th and 6th.
Yes. Here. Yes, and this is my first year. So this is Casey.
I'm Casey. I'm the young adult librarian at the BB Library.
Oh, okay.
I just started basically January.
I was going to say, because I know a lot of them, and I'm like...
Very end of December, beginning of January.
Oh, excellent. I do love them.
Yeah. So I would teach your 6th and your 8th.
Yeah.
And then we actually have a new children's librarian too, Dory, who is floating around here today as well. And so she'd hit your. Well, I mean, I could also help the 2nd grader and vice versa, but she would definitely hit the 2nd grader.
Yeah, I definitely would. They would recognize me the minute. All the women who do the checkout, I know. Yep. The only one's name I know is Maureen, because that's my name. But
Maureen's
the others they're all great.
Yeah.
And they would absolutely recognize me. They might not know my name, but and downstairs, there's the gentleman who's been there a long time. Is
it Steve?
Probably.
Steve's the only one that.
Okay, definitely Steve.
And he only works part-time now.
Oh, okay.
And you might see him anywhere. He will sometimes work behind the certain desk. He will sometimes work at Adult Reference. He will sometimes work down with us. He kind of covers where he's great because he can cover anywhere we need.
And then there's a young girl whose name says colors hair. Or
she's left.
The new.
Oh,
she's the new.
Okay.
Yes, I'm the new.
Okay.
That was Emily.
Okay, and then I think that is, like I said, so bad with names.
Yeah.
And then there's the woman who's also been there a very long time, who's there a lot. She's probably 50. I could describe her. I see her in a lot of stuff like this.
I was going to say, they're across the hall doing a research.
That's probably Nancy.
Yes, it is Nancy.
Yeah. So Nancy's still there.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Most of the rest, and then there's one of our part-time people is still there, and the rest of us are all new.
Oh, great.
Since January. Well, since December.
Yeah.
So. There's a lot of newness in library.
Yes.
We now have media specialists at the elementary schools. We're helping with technology and in the libraries. They're kind of dual role. I think they got a lot on their plate because they're serving 2 different schools at
and they're serving a big void that hasn't been there.
Yes, but it's very important that they're there. My position is new, so a lot is changing, and we're working well together with the BB, and I think that's a very strong media connection that we have. So I see 5th grade classes regularly, and an 8th grade class every other day, but other than that, I work collaboratively with teachers, so I kind of see them on a by-need basis based on what they're doing. And I answer any and all tech and reading questions. And Casey is new.
Pretty much just told you what's on the I do the 5th through the 12th. But I also do some of the other, we have that one desk, so, I'll answer questions about anything. I just generally know those questions better than, if they ask me for a picture book, I'm like, sure we have something like that? Where, our other new librarian, Dory, can, take them right to the picture book, without even having to, look it up on the computer. She's got that memory for it. I'll get there, but not yet.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about is illiteracy. So not being able to read, but not choosing to read. And becoming acquainted with your readers, how you would identify them, given I use Donna Lynn Miller, the Book Whisperers. She's kind of my reading teacher. She's great. She blogs, and she has written many books on getting students to want to read on their own. So she's kind of my go-to person, and I use her terms here to define the different types of readers. And so I'm going to talk about strategies. Casey's going to talk about titles, and at the end of the day, we all just want to keep them reading, and some situational suggestions, and hopefully this will get you on your way at home with an environment that is going to make them feel comfortable reading and make them want to do it. But it's a lot of work. So, avid lifelong reader though, it's a stretch of a goal. But I do want to say that this isn't something that's going to be achieved in 5th grade or in 8th grade. It's something that they're going to work towards and to identify as a lifelong reader. It's something they work towards each and every year. But each and every year it gets more and more important for them to identify as a reader because the drop-off just becomes so much bigger the older that they get.
Well, and do you think it's either they get it, they love it, it's them, or it's not? Like that, and obviously, is that kind of what this is all about? Because I got one that is and 2 that are.
I think
not.
I think there are some kids that just never quite really get into it, but I think a lot of it, you know, from experience is that some kids like a very narrow, specific, you know, window of what they like. So if you can find that, that's great. But sometimes it's very hard to find that narrow window of what they like or how they like to read. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit as we go, but like, you know, some kids are audiobook fanatics and will listen to anything, but they won't actually pick up a book and read it. And that's okay, because they're still getting the story and they're getting the language out of the books. It's going into their heads.
Oh, that is okay.
It is okay. And a lot of the time, you know, one of the things we try and do at the BB is have a lot, you know, what we have on audio, we have in book form too. So a lot of the kids will sit there and they'll follow along in the book because they know the words, you know, so you can get them the book and the audio. So, and sometimes, and even with, like, for example, I'll talk about it right now because I have it sitting here. You know, for the Percy Jackson series, we have it.
Sometimes feel more like a movie.
We have it in graphic novel. We have it in audiobook. We have it in the original book form, and we have it on video. So it's like if you can get them to watch the video, very often you can then get them to read the graphic novel, and then they want even more. So then they'll read the book or they'll listen to the audio.
And then they're on a rewarding kick for the next.
Well, and then they'll read a ton of books because he has a ton of books out there, and that's great too. But we have, you know, we have The Giver like this. Well, we don't have a graphic novel for The Giver, but The Wrinkle in Time. I mean, we have a variety of things. City of Ember. You know, we have a variety of things that we have in so many different forms. And I mean, the movie's kind of the least of the forms, but a lot of the time, you know, we have a lot of parents that come in and are like, my kid watched the first Harry Potter book, or the first Harry Potter movie, and now they want the book because they want more in depth of the story because they got hooked by the story in the movie. And these aren't the Percy Jackson movies aren't the best combination, but.
I think the biggest thing is time. The time that it takes spent reading. Mm-hmm. And I think right now they see school as the time to read, and they don't identify home as the time to read or their own time as time to read. They think that it's work that should be done at school. And I think with non-readers, and so a lot of it is
I would almost think it's the opposite. It's that it's what you're supposed to be doing at home, and you know, our kids, our society today, you've got 27 other things hitting your schedule.
Well, and I think that's why they don't see a place for it at home, is because they have so many other things. So it is important
I remember
give that
as a kid,
time.
you know, when we would go, you know, to the away sports game, and my parents, you know, backseat, they'd hand you a book, and you know, that's what you entertain yourself
today.
For the
this.
Yeah.
I know, but well, we had a Game Boy. I mean, pretty old school Game Boy at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a Game Boy and stuff, but they were like, nope, that's only for like long trips or very specific times that we could play with that. And the rest of the time, they were like, you have a book or you're staring out the window. Like those are your two options. And I mean, my brother and I were always readers, but part of it was because my parents, you know, we saw them reading, and they, you know, they were like, I mean, we didn't have the distraction of like the TVs in the cars either, you know, kind of thing. But
neither did my kids.
yeah, which I think is generally, I mean, it's not a bad thing to have it for the long trips. But
I agree, but when people used to go to the grocery store, it just drives me.
When I'm following people around town and I can see it, and I'm like, they're going 5 minutes, but yeah. So, you know, there are places to find it even within the busy schedules, but sometimes it's hard to remember that, like, you know, maybe today's the day no councils, they have to go for the book today or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. Well, the good news is that they are reading well, especially in Massachusetts. the fourth grade reading standards, the national test, they're performing very well. It's higher than other states. So they are reading well in fourth grade. But the bad news is that they just don't want to read for themselves. And this is getting to be more and more of a thing the older that they get. So right now, about 45% of 17-year-olds say that they read for pleasure 1 or 2 times a year. So that's almost hard number to look at.
I mean, the fact that it's almost half is sometimes you look at it and you're like, wow, we're doing pretty well to have half of them doing it because so many of them don't.
But 1 to 2 times per year. That's the extent that reading for pleasure is happening. But then again, they're doing great in fourth grade. They can read well. Children who read for fun, there's a much greater number at the younger years, but then it just drops off. It drops off a little more at 13, and at 17, that's the end of their schooling, where they move on and where the lifelong reader title really starts. So the lower the number gets, the less likely they are to become adult readers, and it's tricky. Not very many students identify as daily readers, and 8 or 9% back in 1984 identified as hardly ever or never read, and now those numbers have jumped up to 22 and 27%. There are a lot of factors that are much different today than 1984, of course. We think about technology, how that's changed just in the last decade is significant.
Well, TV, when you think about what's available, like you had cartoons at a certain hour when you came home from school. That was it. Now
you didn't even really have like
demand all
VHS
day, every
tapes
day.
back then at that period of time even.
Yeah, or not that you owned.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were renting
You rented.
the VHS
Yep.
at Blockbuster, but
And reading is much less an interest that they collect. They have all those other interests, and they don't see themselves as readers. And the farther they go at not thinking of themselves as readers, the less likely they are to later down the line. And nationwide, this is happening. There were some questions that were asked about e-device, e-book readers, and they do have access to all of this technology that does allow them to tap into reading in other ways, but they're generally not using it that way, and the statistics.
Or they're reading.
The impact is on them.
Or they're reading things,
is on
like they're going on like BuzzFeed and they're reading those things. So they're reading words, but not enough words to make to make them a reader kind of thing.
Yeah. And so we call it illiteracy, when someone can read but they're not interested in doing so. And it's a problem. They can read, but the less they are doing it as they continue on, the less reading comprehension they're getting, the less vocabulary they're getting. It's impacting their academic life, but also their personal life too. Reading is a great connection, social connection between people. They're missing that part of it too. So why is reading for fun or free voluntary reading important? Well, it is improving reading comprehension, and it's improving it in context. It's not sitting down in a classroom and having a worksheet where they are applying, the practices just by sentence to sentence. It's in context. They're doing it on their own without realizing that they're doing it. It's more natural. Difficult academic texts become more accessible. So as they're reading on their own, the things that they have to read for school, in college, grad school, those are becoming easier to really get because they have the personal reading to have developed it. Yes, writing, vocabulary, spelling, grammar, all of these things are impacted by the reading that they're doing on their own. And a lot of the times the free voluntary reading is not happening at school. There might not be time based on the curriculum in ELA. I know at the Galvin School, 5th grade is the last time that they see a reading class. They do have ELA as they continue on, but a specific section in the day for just reading stops at 5th grade. So if they're not getting it at home, yes, they do have it in 5th grade. It's a block that's embedded into their schedule in addition to ELA.
Block look like? Like what's the Are they learning about comprehension, taking away from sentence reading structure, or is it free reading? Like, what is that?
It's a combination, and so the ELA is very curriculum tied, and they have their one class read that they do for a couple months, and all of the work that goes with it. But reading is a little less structured in it, and it really depends on the teacher. But every teacher does it a different way. Some teacher they read a different genre each day, or something of the sort. But that's about the last chance they have to have a lot of free reading that's embedded into their schedule already. So it said that through third grade they're learning to read, and it's engaging. They can do it with others. They're learning to read. They're looking at the books. They might not be looking at the picture, at the text as much as they are the pictures. But there are connections happening. They're learning to read, they're developing the skills needed to read and become better readers. But from grade 4 on, when they're reading to learn, there's a disconnect happening. Usually the reading that's done in school, while they had all this great, more engaging reading earlier on in life, they're having that one class, one book that's maybe tapping into a couple of the students, but it's leveled in a particular way that's not meeting all of the students' needs. And they're not interested with all of the close reading that they have to do, looking at the same paragraph a couple times. And it's pushing. And that's where we lose a lot of the students, because the free reading isn't happening in school, and it needs to happen in other places. Anyone who calls himself or herself, this is from my favorite John Lynn Miller, my reading go-to, a reader can tell you that it starts with encountering great books, heartfelt recommendations, and a community of readers who share this passion. I think a community of readers was always kind of embedded into the school environment, whereas right now I don't think that there is as much of a community of readers. There's a community of social media users. There's a community of movie lovers, but they don't identify as readers, and when it's not shared between student to student, a student is less likely to identify themselves as a reader, because they don't think that it's something that is as socially acceptable as it would be to say that they love watching Vine videos. Or
so you mean like having a book club for fifth graders? Like, hey, let's all read the Percy Jackson book and then discuss it, that type of a...
Well, a community...
That's one way to, certainly one way to do it.
It is certainly a way that, and we hope to have more opportunities to have communities of readers, but even just in the general environment of school, for it to be more acceptable for students to be readers and share with one another what book they've just read, how they felt about it, whether they would recommend it to someone else.
This Clash of Clans is so much more fun to talk about.
And we don't see a lot of that right now, and that's something that is really taking away the students' desire to want to read, that they can't share it with others. So Don Lynn uses a few different words to describe the different types of readers. So a developing reader is kind of the lowest form, and that's what we think as a struggling or a weaker reader. So this is where they're kind of in between learning to read and wanting to read, but they're still struggling to get to the point where they can read independently, and that it's something that they can do well. So a lot of times here there are like reading disabilities that are in the way, or some really negative reading experience from their past that's kind of preventing them from moving forward. But reading comprehension is difficult, which makes everything else difficult, and they don't want to read. So they read significantly less than others, and they're usually below grade level. I think a lot of what is put into the curriculum and what teachers do is designed to help those developing readers, and a lot of the other readers here are kind of not as tapped into. So the next, what we see a lot of, I think most of in middle school especially, is they can read well, they can read, they have that ability, but they are unmotivated and uninterested. It's just not something that they want to do. So they usually will read to pass. They'll read for the grade. They'll read for the grade, and then they won't read beyond what is assigned to them. So they will read that one class book that they are reading all together with everyone at the same pace that the teacher is reading it. They won't feel like it's something that they really identify with as much. But if they have to read an extra mystery or something for a book report, they're going to pick the bare minimum, and they're not going to be interested, even if it's a genre that they like. They're just going to see it as extra reading, and they're not going to want to tap into it.
It's just homework.
Yes, it's
Just
homework.
homework.
It's work, and it's not pleasure.
What I had.
And that's what a lot of readers are, and a lot of them aren't being, their needs aren't being met as much with the curriculum. And so we're trying to build an experience outside of school that can help those readers especially. Another reader that's not really tapped into very much is the underground reader. So maybe this reader is gifted, a really great independent reader, reads all the time, but there's a disconnect between what they read on their own and at school. And maybe they hide their own book in, the book that they're reading with the class because they don't see the reading that's happening in class.
Or they've already finished the book in class and they're bored, and so they
there's a
read.
disconnect.
That was me in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah. And they don't see the classroom reading.
I did do it.
Yes.
I did do it.
Yes. It's not benefiting from them.
Well, either that or sometimes you couldn't get away with hiding the other book inside the book, so I would do something completely not related instead.
That is so bizarre.
Oh, I thought maybe that was the music to wrap it up.
No, you know what that is? So I share a Spotify account. I think someone else just used my Spotify account. I'm gonna kill him. Anyways, that was
At least it wasn't like hardcore rap or anything.
Yeah, nothing inappropriate.
yeah. No, just some Saturday morning soul music. No big deal.
Wasn't bad.
Okay, moving on.
Moving
I don't
on.
know what the Spotify is.
It's just music streaming.
It's awesome,
Now that I
actually.
am morbidly embarrassed for our masses here.
I promise not to put it on
But
Facebook.
it is on camera, so
So what we're all striving towards is the avid reader. So who's passionate about the reading that they're doing in school, out of school, always raising their hands to answer questions, engaging with other students, and passes on the passion to others. And that's what we all want. So strategies. So a reading environment makes a really big difference. So think about the time that they spend in school where they might think that they should be doing all of their reading. If they're not getting reading done there, they need to have an environment at home or somewhere in their community where they feel like they can be a reader. So surround your children with books, and have books of all different levels. If you have kids of all different ages, that's already there, and that's great. Because if they're not feeling like reading a whole chapter book, it's okay if your 6th grader wants to read a picture book with their sibling. That is still reading, and it's engaging. And if you are interested in reading books that are middle school level, so you can have a better connection with your child, that is totally cool too. I read a lot of middle grade and teen books just because that makes a more authentic conversation with the students.
yeah, and for both of us, it makes it easier for us to suggest books to a wide variety of students because we've read a variety of things in the
Yeah.
It's not a genre in the age group, the age range.
Yeah. And you don't have to like everything that they're reading, but if there is some sort of authentic connection that's more than, oh, how's that book? Do you like it? And having the conversation end there when there's more to talk about, it makes it a little more of a positive reading environment at home when everyone's talking about books. And when there's more reading happening at home, think about what your evening looks like at home. Is there a time when there's no TV on, when there's no devices in their hands, or if there is a device that they're using it for finding an article or checking news, or reading an ebook that they borrowed from Overdrive. If there isn't time set aside where the TV is off and everyone is doing kind of their own thing, then they may not be seeing as many opportunities to read at home, and they might really benefit from just having more time that they can use. And at first, if it's new, if there is no time at home now, and there's now this giant hour chunk, they're probably going to freak out and not know how to spend it. So it can start small, even if there's just 10 minutes after dinner or something that ends up growing. Just having something that's a little more of a reading environment where the TV doesn't go on right away is going to help out. So, environment makes a big difference. And we try to make those environments in other places too. So at the, I think it's really funny because I feel like the reading that happens in the Learning Commons, it is like 75% of it is the teacher who they come down with and their expectations. So if the teacher's expectations are, okay, go grab a book, I don't care what you do, or you're going to select the right book for you, you're going to be mindful about your choices, you're going to start it, if it doesn't work, you're going to try something new, and then we're going to, you know, spend our time here reading. There's a lot of different behavior that comes from both of those situations. So a lot of it is expectations, but students do have supportive reading spaces at the Learning Commons downstairs, and sometimes at the BB on half days. Maybe not so much when it's a crazy
although we do have a lot of
house,
kids that come in and do homework, and there are spaces. I mean, there are, you know, maybe, you know, if they're going to do, you know, quieter space, the teen specific, the YA specific area probably is not the best place after school. But we have moved it around so that it is a better. We've moved the furniture around, so there is a section that, I mean, there'll be a noise level, but there is a section that, like, within where kind of the alcove where the books are, we've put some of the high top tables, so it's more of a learning homework space. And we also have in the afternoons, most afternoons, the room we use for the story times is a homework area that they can go in, and if they're reading by themselves or they're doing homework or, you know, a small group, they can go in there and use that space. And it's not soundproof, but it's quieter.
Is there like someone library staff in there, or is it
No,
just a space
I mean we can
that
see
they
it
know
though because it's
oh yes,
like the
visual.
windows, but
yeah.
no, we're not actively in there.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No, I guess my predecessor tried something where she was actively in there and she just didn't get the kids because it is spotty who we get.
And what age range do you usually see in there?
Generally we see the middle school and up because they're the ones that tend to come. Well, we tend to see mostly the middle schoolers using it because they're the ones that come, and then like their parent has said when you come home your homework has to be done, and so they'll go in there and do their homework.
And it's so
before they
easy
go
to get to
computers.
from parents.
Yeah, and it's also very easy access.
The thing that I find interesting is the crowd that's on the stairs out front.
Yeah.
Talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
About that. Yeah, no, which is why I said that there is a section of the young adult section that would not be
the antithesis of. I'm sure they're not inside much, or maybe they are just.
They do come in, but they are on their phones and they're chatting and they're, you know.
I think
They're
it's
not
that
like
third
kids.
space, like they're coming into or they're using that space because
They're using
they
it
don't
as a
know
safe
where else
space
they
after
can
school,
go.
not
Yeah.
as a homework learning environment. But we
Do you
also
see the
have
same kids?
but we also have, especially a lot of our middle schoolers, not counting early release days because they're a whole different thing. A lot of the middle schoolers will come in and they will go use the computers. You know, there's a group of them that come in every day that come in and do their homework and use the computers over on the children's side, you know, very quietly and respectfully and do their thing. And there's a group, mostly girls, but we definitely have a group that comes in regularly that's also a very dedicated, you know, this is obviously what they have to do after school, but they're like, I'm going to get my homework done and then I'm going to quietly, you know, play Minecraft or do something on the computer, but they are good. Like, our internet was down right after school yesterday, or maybe Thursday, the early release day. And we had a kid who was panicking because she was like, I have to email my parents. Like, this is like, that's how I tell them that I'm here, and like, your internet's down, and like, how do I do that? And so yes, we have a group that are very dedicated, you know, that we see every day that are very dedicated about actually, you know, doing their homework and doing work. So we also have a group that isn't, but we do have the group that is as well. So
get a little bit of that everywhere.
yeah.
And some readers, they do need, you know, that space, and then there are other readers who will find the space no matter like what situation they're in. They'll read in the back of the car. They'll read when there's, you know,
And
like
sometimes
groups
be
of
talking to
people
them, and all of a sudden they'll be like, "Wait, were you talking?"
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't paying attention.
So every student is different.
Yep.
Some need that quiet space. Maybe they need like that chair in their room that's kind of their quiet spot when others, you know, just read under the covers or whatever. They're happy anywhere.
Yeah.
So the next strategy is freedom and responsibility. So as the freedom is kind of taken away in the school setting, there needs to be more of that happening outside of school. And for them to feel like they can go to the library and not feel like they're getting handed books that they have to read or something of the sort. There needs to be some accountability. So self-selecting the books that they're going to read and knowing how to make good choices is a whole skill in itself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're not always making the right choices for themselves because they don't know how to. They know that they liked this one book. I have this one girl who is a fantastic reader, and when I saw her a couple days ago checking out a book, it was a book that she had already read twice. And she knows what she likes, she's a great reader, but she just didn't know how to move forward from there. What should come next? And it was funny because the first two books that were read-alikes for what she liked, she had already read. So she's a great reader, she just didn't know how to expand her her horizons. And it is a challenge. It's navigating the online catalog, figuring out genre, looking at a book and knowing whether it's going to have that same kind of tie-in, whether it was, she really liked realistic fiction with characters who have disabilities. And she was very specific about it, and she couldn't tell from, a lot of books, you're not going to be able to tell whether the main character has that, unless she's, specifically searching for it on the catalog. So
sometimes the catalogs aren't very intuitive. I mean, I know sometimes when we're trying to find something, and we have a lot of information, like a patron even knows, pretty much knows the title. If we don't get the title exactly right in our catalog, it'll pop up that nothing's there. And I'm like, so, I mean, I use Amazon all the time, because Amazon is much less fussy, so if you put it close to the title, you will get, and then I go back in with the correct title, and, it's usually like, rather than why do princesses wear boots, it's like princesses wear boots. But like in the book, it's question about, this was actually a real example, it asks that question in the text, and so the person had come and that was what they assumed the title was, but the title was more of a statement than a question or vice versa.
And I think hearing no is a real trigger. If you don't love something that they're picking, because you know that they've already read it, or because it's way below them, or that they're just gonna look at the pictures. Yeah. Don't say no. You want to still be encouraging and validating their choices, but give them more options. Don't have that be the only book that they take home. When I have children that are on the fence, they're not sure. Try all 4 of them.
Yeah.
Bring them home.
I encourage people to take
a
bunch, and I also tell them if you read the inside front cover and this doesn't sound like your book, my feelings won't be hurt if you tell me. This doesn't sound like my book. It's okay. Yes, I'm suggesting it, but I'm suggesting it purely based off the criteria you gave me. So if it doesn't fit with that criteria in your mind, that's okay. I'll just stick it back on the shelf, and it'll be the next person who comes in might want to read that particular book. It's it's really okay to tell us no, and also to take a variety of stuff, because even if it sounds good in the flap, you might get a chapter and be like, this book is horrid, or I just can't read this book, or now's not the time, because a lot of people do read based off what they're in the mood for at the moment. So if now is not the time for that book, that's okay. We're okay with that.
And I get a lot of kids who come in having been sent down to get a new, independent reading book for when they finish their work. And they don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes, either they won't know to ask for help, or they don't want to accept it when help is there. I think they see this adult, standing in front of them, and they have trouble realizing that, no, we know the books that are your level. We're not going to, suggest to you something that we're reading that's beyond you. We do have
crazy adult nonfiction or something.
Yeah, we do have knowledge of what's we do have knowledge of what might come next. If you loved Wonder, if you love Percy Jackson, that's our forte, and I think that they have a problem. I think just seeing an adult in that situation, they don't see us as that person, and that's why having a community of readers is even more important, because if they're not getting recommendations from their peers, I have that one girl who was having trouble finding a book, just went to something that she already read. She gets her entire class recommendations, And she's that passion reader, she's that avid reader. And even she has trouble making decisions on what to read next. So knowing that they can ask for help is huge too. And it's a skill. And it's a social skill too. Sometimes they don't know that that is an option. So with reading freedom comes the go-tos. So Casey sees a lot of the students who come in and they have to pick a book and they have no idea where to start. So she has some go-tos that she likes to use for those kids who have nothing. They give you nothing to start off with.
Yeah. Well, and I bunched it, as you can see from the handout, kind of by some of the categories that we get. Like the kid who plays, like you say, wrestle. We'll have a novel that's about, a kid who wrestles, and so that might be a good place to start with certain kids. Or just the book that like everyone, is talking about, or that the movie's about to come out. We notice every time, one of the new Hunger Game movie comes out, our entire stock of Hunger Game books go out again.
Yeah.
And you can't imagine there are still people, of that age who haven't read it, but that, we have 30 copies and they all go out. And and then you start recommending the other dystopians, and then you run out of those, and you're like, well, so these are some of the general categories, and I only picked 2 examples out of each. And one of the other things that I find important is that our collection at the Beebe Library, we kind of split, and it's very inaccurate because it depends on the level of the reader and everything. We kind of split our children's at the end of 5th grade, just because we don't have the space to fit all the Percy Jackson books and the Diary of the Wimpy Kids, and a lot of those like 5th graders are reading, and even the 6th graders and up are reading in our young adult space, and also have a good selection of books all the way through the end of high school. So, one of the things that we try and stress is that it's okay that, even if your 8th grader is going over to the children's section, that's okay, because that's where Harry Potter is, that's where there are plenty of really good books that maybe won't be a super challenge, but will engage and have themes and stuff that, any age can. I read from our children's section all the time. There's some of the best books, that I've read that are kind of on that cusp, and it's just in our library they happen to be children's, other libraries they might be YA. They're better than some of the YA that we have, and it doesn't really matter.
And they don't need to feel, like if they have a parent or someone with them pushing them in a section that they're not ready for, that's okay. There's still plenty of children
our copies of The Hobbit are in our children's collection.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the kids,
a lot of kids
a lot of our classics are there. So like, there's no shame in going into that area, and a lot of people, I think, especially when it's a kid by themselves, won't go in that, in the children's area because, well, like, I'm an adult now, and so like I shouldn't be reading anything from over there, but there is plenty over there that is still of interest to them. And then a couple of the other, just to point out a couple things, the novels in different format, we are all about however they want to read. We don't make judgments. We are as much for the graphic novels as we are for the regular novels, as we are for the Ellen Hopkins does all of hers in like a free verse thing, and some people get really into the novels, and she's not the only one, get into the novels in verse. We have short story collections on a theme, so if they want to read...
Go back.
Yeah.
When you say graphic novel and you say stories in verse, okay, so that's...
I brought examples so I can show you. So the Ellen Hopkins books, they're full sentences for a lot of it, but she writes it in a format, and so it reads, even though they're a big thick book, they read quite quickly because it's not like a book where she has a whole lot of books.
This would lean towards like the 8th grade reader.
Yeah, because of the topics of her books. Yeah, your 8th grader, because she writes a lot about like drugs and addictions and stuff. They're semi-autobiographical. Her daughter. It's kind of the story of her daughter. A lot of them, not all of them. But
she taps in well to those kids who are more interested in the heavy topics but don't want to do heavy reading.
Right.
Because that's exactly
the way. And then with the graphic novels, there's I brought 2. There's a variety in the way that they come. Like this one is a standalone story that I actually met the authors, and Prudence Shen wrote this originally as a novel, but her agent looked at it and said this would make a really good graphic novel. So they paired her with an artist who did the art, and they pared the story down to the graphic novel. But it started out as a novel, so I mean, it has all the elements that a novel would have. And even these days with the comic book heroes.
Yeah, I'm wondering with my 6th grader,
Yeah.
if I can't give him this first.
Right, and we have a
And
lot
then-
of.
And graphic novels are really great for, like with reading comprehension, a lot of times when they have like a full novel, if there's a vocab word, they'll just kind of skip over it and, you know, or like, you know, they'll skip over it, they'll try to figure it out, but not really, you know,
Right.
take it to the level where they look it up or, you know, look at the context. But with the graphic novels, there's a visual going along
And
with it,
sometimes
so it's
the
really
kids,
great for vocabulary.
you get those reluctant readers who don't want to invest the time into reading every last word, say, in The Lightning Thief, but they can get a lot out of the graphic novel version of The Lightning Thief. And then maybe because they like that so much, you know, maybe the next time you go to the library you can convince them that, you know, now you really like the story and you know the characters, so maybe, you know, putting the time into this would be something that would be, you know, worth your effort.
Is it, I mean, I know is it redundant? I mean, obviously, it's the
there's
same
going to be
story.
some redundancy. I mean, this, like, The Lightning Thief, you know, like a graphic novel, not completely, but a lot of it, especially with the ones that are the, you know, come after the book and are the same story, are going to be distilled down to a lot of, like, just the dialogue kind of stuff, which isn't a bad thing. But you're going to get a lot more description because that's going to show you the description, where this is going to has to describe it to you, you know, in words. But you know, it is redundant. But we have a lot of kids who.
But do
you know,
a lot of kids go from this to that?
Mm-hmm.
And
both ways.
It's
They'll
a
go
good
both ways.
starting point.
Yes.
Because they kind of got to
Well, is
know
this
what
the hook?
Percy,
I guess
what
that's my
Percy
question.
does.
It can
but-
definitely be.
Yeah, because if this can be the hook, this.
And not, I mean,
great
not all
advice.
of them have a novel that goes with them. But if you get like if like that story is about a robotics thing.
Please
so
excuse the
if we do
interruption.
that, we can find other. books
We
about
have
robotics
reached the
conversation.
end of our
Novels.
first session.
So.
At this point,
And at 6th grade,
we trust
I
that
see
you
a lot
have
of
had
our
a
5th and
great
6th grade
experience,
kids, they
and
love
that momentum will carry
books
over
like
into our
James
next
Patterson,
session,
Yeah.
which will be starting
Miss
at
Funny and Treasure
10:50.
Hunters.
So hopefully everyone is
That has
wrapping up.
illustrations
During the break,
embedded
feel free
into
to
it,
use
kind
the
of like Diary of a
restroom,
Wimpy
make
Kid,
calls
so a little
home.
more,
But
more
again,
storyline,
Yeah.
more
First session will be
that's a great way
ending
too. They
in
still
a
have
few
those
minutes.
Yeah.
So
And then
sometimes that's hard to get to, you know, just get
you
rid
know,
of
with our
entirely.
audiobooks too, we have a variety of lengths. I mean, like this one is, let's count, 4 hours, basically 5 hours. Or The Lightning Thief, I think I looked, yeah, it's like 10 hours. So also, you know, but I mean, these are the words, these are, you know.
Word for word.
Yeah, we don't buy abridged ones because those
Yeah.
are just silly. And then
It
we
can
also
be an
have.
engaging family experience too.
And then we
that
also
can be a
have-
car ride. Yeah.
Well, we also have not a huge selection.
Yeah,
of
I used to
playaways.
playaways and walked around the lake with them.
But it's also nice, like if you are going on a car trip and everyone's at a different reading level, like you don't have to pick something that your 2nd grader and your 8th grader would
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
You know, you can get something for for each of them.
And I remember they need someone to like hold my hand. Isn't there some sort of an app where
There's
I can
there's
have
Overdrive that you can do that has
downloaded onto
that has
yeah.
ebooks as well as e-audio books.
Mhm.
It has both, and we have a pretty good
Basic, what if
selection
I
of
want-
them.
Do you have, is nothing can possibly go wrong on an audio or no?
No, because it's only in graphic novel form. So that one particular.
Oh,
one
this is
That
not-
one's just a
No,
standalone.
she wrote it as a novel, and then they and maybe some, if it does really well, maybe they'll publish the novel someday. But this is the only form that that particular one is. And we do have, there aren't a huge amount of the graphic novels like that aren't tied into something else or part of a series.
Yeah, I'm probably
you know,
more
but
interested in the ones that are tied into a book.
yeah, which
Well, like this, although you know the 6th graders just write us, or at least
Right. Yeah.
good with us.
but we also have, I mean, we have the next
well,
two.
I mean-
We have the next 2 books in that series in graphic novel. We have his Red Pyramid in graphic novel. I mean, we have all sorts of things that tie in, and even the superhero comics. I mean, they have gotten to the point, Marvel and DC have gotten to the point where they have to compete with these, so they do a really good story as well. You know, they're not just like the old comic strip kind of like beat 'em up, you
Yeah.
know, Superman, you know, pose, and that's like
Yeah.
3 pages is just him like getting ready. You know, they really do have a really good story now. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah, and we've got a graphic novel collection not only in our children's section, which has some really good stuff, but also we have a YA one and an adult one now. And the adult and YA one is very interchangeable. I mean, there's certain things in adult that would not, certainly not. I mean, your 8th grader probably would be okay, but your 6th grader would not be. But there's also a lot in that section that is I mean, the one that won the Caldecott this year is a graphic novel, and it just in our library it happens to be in the adult section because they're who purchased it before the awards came out. But it won the Caldecott, so it won the children's award. So
Wow.
well, through age 14.
And what getting because my 6th grader has an iTouch, but it's like a 5.
Doesn't really matter, honestly.
Okay.
Oh gosh, it's on.
No, we might just want to have closure just for the sake
Oh,
of recording because I think he has another session.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
Maureen, thank you very much. We are both here and
Thank
we're
you.
happy to.
This big mushroom.
And the masses.
Thank you, everyone.
We're happy to.